we thought that would be fitting to congratulate them on the week that we start the series, I Pity the Fool. They were not fools, and congratulations to our graduates. We're really, really proud of each and every. Let me ask you, how many of you have ever done something dumb? Anybody? Okay, good. I like being in rooms like this because I feel at home, right? Whenever everyone can go, yeah, I've done something dumb. Like, I feel like I'm with my people, right? Like, because we've all done that. Like, we've done dumb stuff, and truth be told, we're going to do more dumb stuff in the future. Like, it's going to happen. Like, last weekend, my family was in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, playing in a baseball tournament. And we were playing against teams we'd never seen before. So me and my father-in-law, we wanted to go up early and watch the first game, the teams that we were going to be playing. And so we were staying about 45 minutes to an hour away from the field. And so I typed in to the GPS, Elizabethtown Sports Complex. And my GPS heard Elizabeth. That's just all it heard. And I didn't realize that that's all that it heard. So we're driving an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm going, Tom, this does not look like the way that we came in yesterday. None of this looks familiar at all. I'm like, if a sports complex pops up in the middle of this cornfield, I am going to be as shocked as anybody. And next thing I know, the GPS stops and says, and you have arrived at Elizabeth. What are you talking about? And I look and I realize we have driven not to Elizabethtown Sports Complex, but to a little town, I don't know if you've ever been there before, probably not, called Elizabeth, Indiana. We're not even in the right state. We're not going to watch that first game. We're barely going to make it there for our game now. Because I was hoping, just fingers crossed, maybe Elizabeth is like the precursor to Elizabethtown. Maybe they're beside each other. They're not. They're not. They're about an hour and 15 minutes away from each other. And so, yeah, we've all done something dumb from time to time, and I'm sure that we're all going to do more dumb stuff like not checking the GPS whenever you are out of town. Some things are small, like if you're an hour late for a baseball game, who cares? That's small. But sometimes we make really big, dumb decisions. Like, you ever made a bad investment? Ever put your money into something that you thought, oh, this is going to be the next big thing, and then it completely tanks, and that technology is no longer good after 2 years? Or maybe you lost your temper and ruined a relationship, or we've got some small things that we do that are dumb, and then we got some others that have big ramifications to our lives. And for me, I feel prone to those situations. So I really, I don't know about you, but I want to dummy-proof my life. If there was a way that I could figure out how to make less painful decisions, I want to learn how to do that. And that's actually what we're going to be doing over the next 4 weeks. We're going to be teaching from one of the wisdom books of the Scriptures called Proverbs. These are principles. They're not promises, but they are principles that are meant to help us lead more successful and flourishing lives, and to help us, to be frank, not to make so many dumb decisions. It's meant to be a book to dummy-proof our life. Now, for some people, when they think about the Bible, they really only think about the Bible as a book of morals, that it's a morality book. Oh, it helps me to understand what's right and wrong. But there's actually a whole section of the Bible called wisdom literature. That's not necessarily talking about morality, right and wrong, but it's talking about what's the wise thing to do? What should you do? For most Christians, we ask the wrong question the majority of the time. The majority of the time, Christians ask themselves this question: what am I allowed to do? What am I allowed to do, right? We're getting ready to do this series in August called Asking for a Friend, which I'm still looking for questions for. Where you send in your faith questions. And we've done this series probably 5, 6, 7 times since I've been here at Southridge. And a lot of the time that we get questions, I get questions like this. What am I allowed to do? Like, am I allowed to be part of this relationship? Is this permissible? Am I allowed to do this? And like, what Christians want to do is they want to find out how close to the line they can get before they step over, because we're always looking for a good loophole, right? They just want to know what I'm allowed to do. And I'll just be honest, that's a really, really simple and spiritually speaking, immature question to ask. Because there's a better question that we should be asking that will encompass this question, but also all the other questions you should be asking. So rather than asking, what am I allowed to do, we should ask this: what should I do? What should I do? Right? Because there's a difference between moral right and wrong and what's wise. Right? There's a difference. Like for instance, morality. The scriptures talk about lying as being a sin. Right? You should not lie. That's a sin. That's morality. Now, what we're going to learn in a couple weeks when we talk about relationships is that you should choose the right people to be in relationships with. Like, you can choose to be friends and have close relationships with a liar if you want. That's not a morality issue, that's a wisdom issue. Right? You see the difference? There's a difference between morality and wisdom. Now, there is some overlap, but we're always asking the wrong question when we should be asking, when it comes to my relationships, not what am I allowed to do, what should I do? When it comes to our money, not what am I allowed to do? No. What should you do? What is the wise thing to do with your money? When it comes to the way that we speak, when it comes to all these different things, not what am I allowed to do, but what should I do? What is the wise way to go about living my life? And that's what we're going to learn in the book of Proverbs. So Proverbs was written, the majority of Proverbs was written by a guy named King Solomon. He was David's son. And King Solomon was said to be the wisest person to ever live. And the way that he came about this wisdom, the book of 1 Kings actually tells us that when Solomon became king, the Lord said, hey, I will do anything for you. I will give you whatever you want. And most people will believe that Solomon was probably a teenager at this moment whenever he was the king. Now just imagine you as a teenager. And God says, I'll give you whatever you want. What would you ask for? Money? A car? Fame, wealth, all sorts of stuff, right? But Solomon, you know what he asked for? He said, Lord, what I want most from you is wisdom. Wisdom to know how to lead your people. And so the Lord says, absolutely. It made him the wisest man to ever live. In fact, it tells us that he wrote over 3,000 Proverbs. We didn't record all of those in Scripture, but he wrote over 3,000 Proverbs and 1,005 songs. Like this was like people from all over the world would come and see Solomon for his wisdom. And so I don't know if you knew this or not. Like you got like a cheat book for life when it comes to wise decisions in the book of Proverbs, and that's why we should read it. This past week on the Pastor's Potluck, which is one of our podcasts here at Southridge Church. If you're not subscribed to that, make sure you go look on podcasts or on YouTube for the Pastor's Potluck. You got to check that out. But we do something every week at the Pastor's Potluck called the mystery meat. Because you ever go to a church potluck and there's always that one thing you're like, I don't know who brought that, but I'm going to pass on that. Or there's always that one thing. So this is a question that we ask every week, the mystery meat, that the person on the podcast, we don't know what's coming, so it's always going to be different. But this past week, Jared's question to me was, would you rather have a teleportation device or a time machine? Which one would you rather have? You know, like we're tackling life's tough questions on that podcast. And I said, look, honestly, I'd rather have a teleportation device because I would much rather just be able to get wherever I'm going like in the blink of an eye. The only reason why I would ever want a time machine is if I could go back and redo the stupid stuff that I've done. Right? But unfortunately, that's not available to us. So we need to really tap into Proverbs. So today, before we get to any of the topics that we're going to cover the rest, we got to have one foundational idea, one foundational point for the rest of the series. That will help us understand how to make wise decisions, because there's a foundation for all of this, and that's what we're going to look at today. If you have your Bible, or if you want to hit the QR code in front of you, you can go with me to Proverbs chapter 1. My notes are on that QR code if you want to follow along. Proverbs chapter 1, beginning in verse 1, says this: "These are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel." So we've covered that. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline to help them understand the insights of the wise. And so right at the beginning of the book, Solomon's going, listen, if you want to know what the purpose of this book is, it's here to give you wisdom and discipline. How many of us, you don't have to raise your hands, could use a little bit more wisdom and discipline in life? Yeah, I think that's something all of us could probably use, is more wisdom and discipline. And it says it's to help them understand the insights of the wise. So the book of Proverbs is actually meant to influence the way that you think, to help you think wisely. Not just think about what's right and wrong, oh, how close to the line can I get, but like, how far from the line should I even stay, because it's the wise thing to do. Or like, we got to ask that better question. And then it goes on, verse 3. The purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, to help them do what is right, just, and fair. How many of you wish that we lived in a world like that? One where people do what is right, just, and fair? Yeah, this is why we have this book in our Bible, is so that way the creation can be right, just, and fair. It goes on, verse 4, these proverbs will give insight to the simple and knowledge and discernment to the young. So they're actually stuff that you can actually teach your kids. You'll probably learn something this month that will help your kids for their whole life. And the whole idea here, now this is going to sound a little bit like prosperity preaching, but I want to make sure that you understand. I'm not talking prosperity gospel like, oh, sow $1,000 into the ministry and God's going to bless you tenfold. I'm not talking that sort of prosperity ministry. But sometimes we're so afraid in church of getting labeled as a prosperity preacher that we get this point wrong. And so I want to make it really, really clear. Listen, the Bible actually provides principles for you to succeed. Like, there's actually nothing wrong with you flourishing. There's not, I think sometimes we've gotten this message of Christianity that you're supposed to be just miserable and poor, and you're just supposed to just tough it out for Jesus, and like everything's just supposed to be doom and gloom and all this. And there's a portion of our lives that's going to be suffering and pain and all of that stuff. That's absolutely going to happen. That's part of the human experience. But listen, God is also for your success and for your flourishing. He does not have an issue with that whatsoever. He just wants you to do it His way. He's not against your flourishing. So like if someone sold you some sort of poverty gospel that's like, hey, you're just meant to be miserable and poor your whole life if you follow Jesus, that's really not the message of the Bible. It's also not that you're supposed to be, wealthy and healthy and everything's always going to go your way either. It's not that. It's somewhere in the middle. But like, you got to understand, the book of Proverbs can actually help you live a more successful life. Successful in your relationships, successful in your finances, successful in your conduct, successful in your thinking. All these areas that you want to have success in life, the answer might have been under your nose the whole time. And then verse 5 says this: let the wise, so if you want to be wise, let the wise listen to these proverbs and become even wiser. Like, look, if you fancy yourself already pretty wise, and some of you probably are, the book of Proverbs will help you become even wiser. Let those with understanding receive guidance. So I know, you're going, well, I'm doing pretty good in the wisdom area. Listen, there's more to add to it. By exploring the meaning in these proverbs and these parables and the words of the wise and their riddles. So Solomon's saying, listen, if you want to be wise and become more wise, here's what you have to do. You should read the Proverbs. You should make them a regular part of your reading. I know like so many folks in the church, like we just focus so much on only reading the New Testament that like sometimes we miss out on a lot of the treasure that's in the Old Testament. It's there for a reason. In fact, that's where all 5 of the wisdom books are in the Old Testament. All 5 of the wisdom books are in the Old Testament, so don't skip it. In fact, Proverbs is really neat because it has 31 chapters. There's normally 31 days in a month. So it's actually set up to where you could read a chapter a day for a month and get through the whole book, and you can do that a couple times a year. And as you begin to understand these principles and put them into action, you'll realize you're living a much more successful life and a much more God-centered life as well. So that's what we should do. We should read it. We should take it to heart. In fact, Proverbs chapter 8 tells us this. This is how important gaining wisdom is. He says, wisdom is more valuable than rubies. Like, yeah, it's more valuable than like precious stones that could bring you so much money. He says, nothing you desire can compare with it. That's how much we should desire wisdom. Is that we should go after it like we're going after a precious treasure. That's the way we. What is something in your life that like you just could not live without, and you just had to have it? You ever had one of those things, like a pair of shoes or a purse or a house or something like you just had to? Like, listen, I would be in so much trouble if I didn't say this. I just had my 11th wedding anniversary on Friday. Megan is that thing for me, right? Like that thing that I just had to have, no matter what it cost, right? I had to have that. Like, I have to have her in my life, right? It was a non-negotiable. It was worth having like the awkward conversation with her dad to ask her to marry me, right? Like, when you gotta have something, you'll do anything to get it, right? When you gotta have it. I'll just tell you right now. This was me. Y'all can judge me or not. During COVID, you know the dark time. During COVID, the dark times. I'm telling you, I never realized how bad I needed chips and salsa at a Mexican restaurant. And I'm telling you right now, the minute that Rokas and Cross Lanes opened up with that little tent outside, I was risking life and limb. I had to have it. Right? How many of you've ever felt like that about wisdom? Like, I've got to give everything I have to go and get wisdom, because when I get wisdom, then I can live life as God intended for me to live life. That's how important it is. So we got to go and get wisdom. And now Solomon's going to wrap up this first little section with the foundational piece that this one right here, this verse, if it's not true about you, then wisdom is going to escape you. This is the foundational piece, verse 7. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of truth. Oh, but I thought it was IQ. I thought it was street smarts. I thought I was just born with it. No, the fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge. And fools despise wisdom and discipline. You ever have to correct somebody, like maybe at your job, or maybe somebody's done something wrong to you in life and you've had to confront them and they kind of push back on you? That's how you know that you're dealing with a fool. Because fools don't like discipline. They don't like correction. See, those of us that are wise, we know feedback is good. Feedback, though sometimes it can hurt, feedback's good if it comes from someone who loves us and someone that we can trust. Right, so fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge. And that's kind of like an abstract idea. If we're being honest, we go like, what is the fear of the Lord? Because I'll tell you, what for some pastors, fear of the Lord is like, when you hear that word, my guess is if you had any experience with some angry, red-faced preacher pounding a pulpit growing up, that's what you think when you hear fear of the Lord. Like someone that's going to scare you right into heaven, right? Like he's just going to scare the hell right out of you. And I mean, you know what I'm saying. Like every sermon's about hell and the fires of hell. And just like one of those. Like maybe that's what you always think about when you hear fear of the Lord. That's not really the biblical definition of fear of the Lord. It's really not. In fact, here's a better definition for the fear of the Lord. It's an awestruck reverence. Awestruck reverence, but get this. that leads us to trust. Like sometimes, like maybe you have this view, like some of us, we have this view of God where we are terrified of Him because all we ever know about God is that He wants to send us to hell. He wants to punish us. He's out to get us. Because probably somebody told you that. But then some of us might have this like little small view of God where it's like, oh, Jesus is my homeboy. Like, oh, He's so nice to have a part of my life. He's super special, Jesus. He's like boyfriend Jesus. Like He's always there when I need Him. Puts His arm around me when I'm crying and all this. And it's like this really small view of God. But like, just think for a second. Let's get like a little philosophical. If there is, and I believe there is, some supernatural being responsible for everything, how should we approach Him? Awestruck reverence. Like something that would make us feel very small, which is a good place to be. Something that would make us feel very small. Like, the fear of the Lord starts with this idea that there is a God. And guess what? I am not Him. Like there is a God, and He is so much bigger than I can even conceive with my finite mind. He is so amazing, so big, so great, so beautiful, so wise. He's everything. That's where it starts. And like, if He exists, I am smaller than Him. I am beneath Him. And that's the only wise conclusion I could come to. Because only a fool would set himself up in opposition to who I just described. Only a fool. In fact, this is like, y'all ever see parents and kids? Ever see a kid be disrespectful to their parent? It's off-putting, right? You're like, ugh. Don't you know they brought you in this world? They'll take you out of it too? Or just even simple, like, man, your mom and dad, they've been around the block, man. They're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, and you're like 10, 12, acting like you know better? It looks ridiculous to us, doesn't it? When we see that, our stomach churns. We're like, oh, come on. You got to know that looks ridiculous for you to put up a fight against your parents. All the while, most of humanity lives like this all the time against their Creator. And I have to say, you know how ridiculous it looks for a finite being to tell an infinite being how to run His creation? That's a preposterous idea, right? It's like, come on, guys. Infinite versus finite. Timeless versus your life has a start date, and on this side of eternity has an end date. It's not even comparable. It's just like, and this is what happens in our culture. Like, we get people that go like, well, I just can't believe that God would say this. I just can't believe that God would feel this way about this issue. Well, none of your opinion in that really matters because you're not God. Like, you're setting your knowledge up against the knowledge of the infinite? Again, it looks like a toddler fighting with their parent. Except for it's much worse. Because it looks so crazy. Like, so if this God exists, and we're smaller and beneath Him, listen, this is going to be hard to grasp in the world that we live in. That means that you are not the main point of anything going on. That your story is just part of many other stories that God is weaving together to create His story. And not to bruise egos, because I know in our participation trophy world, that's easy. You're an extra in history. I know we grew up in a society that said, you are so special, you're the best. And on some level, yes, that's true. God loves you. He made you special and all that. But listen, on the cosmic scale, you're an extra. Now, imagine how ridiculous it would be if your friend went out to Hollywood to go be a big star. And the first thing that they booked was being an extra in a movie. And they call you. Hey, I got to let you know, man, I'm killing it out here. Killing it. This next movie that I'm about to be a part of, it's pretty much all about me. And you watch the movie and they're an extra in the background. Trying to fight the other guy to get position for the camera. But that's all they are. And that's what it looks like when finite humanity thinks that they are the point of everything. Listen, no, the Creator is the point of everything. I know we get wrapped up in our own lives, our own selves, and we get convinced no, I think this is all actually about me. And it's not, it's all about Him. Honestly, how many of you would say that this world is full of a bunch of fools? Now, is this starting to make sense? Why? Because we live in a world where we have people that for a living call themselves influencers. And y'all call them that too. And they are convinced by the retweets and the likes that they have now become the center of the universe. And then we start going and getting our wisdom from them. And they write books about it, and they give them TV shows. And everything becomes about them. And then we wonder why there's so many fools running around. It can't be about any of us. Awestruck reverence for the Creator of all things. But look at the second part of the definition. It's not, because this is where a lot of people mess this thing up. Because they'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in God. No, you believe intellectually that God exists. You do not have the fear of the Lord if you don't have the second part, because it's an awestruck reverence that leads you to trust Him. We got a lot of people that on the day that they stand before God, they're going to go, yeah, man, I believed you were there the whole time. And He goes, yeah, but you never trusted me, and that was the whole essence of faith. Depart from me, I never knew you. Because it's right here in their head, but they don't actually trust Him. That here's what this means. Let's break this thing down. What does it actually mean to trust the Creator? It means that I believe that, yes, there is a Creator who created all things, and within this creation, He designed it in a way for everything to flourish, but only through His design. That means that, last week, what Dean was talking about, when you follow your heart right into a ditch. You can't lead yourself to flourishing apart from God's design. Your relationships will not flourish apart from God's designs. Your finances will not flourish apart from God's design. Your life will not flourish the way that it's meant to. And I know it looks like there's a bunch of people succeeding outside of God's plan and all that. We can talk about that another day. But listen, these are principles for life. And look, largely speaking, the Creator set everything up to flourish whenever, in the way that He says that it's meant to flourish. It's simply by His design. Flourishing happens when God's creation follows His direction. How many of you, you have a piece of technology that, you understand pretty well? I know enough on my phone, I can text and call and, get on Facebook. I don't know a lot of stuff about my iPhone. I'm pretty certain that if I were to go to the person that created the iPhone, created all the software, everything behind it, and just sat with them a day, my head would explode. When they could tell me about all the functionality and all the things that they created that device to do, and I would go, oh man, I am not tapping into that potential whatsoever. Could you imagine if you went and you talked to the person that like created your laptop. They could tell you all the ways to get the most out of the laptop. That's what we're talking about. If you believe there is a creator behind everything, the wisest thing you could do is to go to him and say, hey, how did you design this world in such a way for me to flourish in it? For me to find success in it? For it to be the least painful experience possible? Because like a lot of the pain that we experience, we cause ourselves. So how do we do that? That's the question that we should be asking. Right, so flourishing happens in God's creation when we follow His direction. Like fear of the Lord includes doing what the Creator says. I know that's crazy because like we go, but are you sure that He said that? Are you sure that's what He meant? That was written so long ago. Are you sure that this applies to me? Because that's in the Old Testament. I'm a New Testament believer. And we just sit here and try to reason and try to loophole ourselves out of all of this. Like, do you actually believe that God knows the way to flourishing? And it can't be just something that you say. Like belief always follows behavior. Right? Belief always follows behavior. So if you go, yeah, I believe that. Okay. Do you actually do what He says? Like, do you actually do what He says? That's how you know if you really believe it. So like, I told y'all like a month or so ago, my son was going to a new hitting and pitching coach for baseball, and it was something different than I'd ever seen in my whole life. Now, I am convinced that this is the way that you should teach hitting and pitching. Why? Why has my behavior changed? Because my belief in what is right has changed. Right? Like, how ignorant would it be if I went and I thought that this, I said, oh, yeah, no, I think that you're right, and then I went and did the opposite. You would go, hey, Scott, I don't think you actually believe that what he says is the right thing to do. Right? Behavior always follows belief. And this isn't just in some areas of life. This is in all. That's why in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 it says that we need to trust in the Lord with all of our hearts, depend not on your own understanding, seek His will in all you do. And He'll show you which path to take. Like, in all you do, that literally means all that you do. Like, hey, where are we going to live? Seek the Lord. What job am I going to take? Seek the Lord. Are we going to put our kids in this school or that school? Seek the Lord. How many kids are we going to have? Seek. Like, am I going to quit my job? Seek the Lord in all you do. And the way that you know if you really fear the Lord is this. When He shows you which path to take, do you actually take it? Like when the Lord goes, listen, this is what I want for your life. Hey, stop your job, start a nonprofit. Oh, gosh. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I have enough faith, Lord. Like, when He shows you which path to take, will you take it? Hey, like if you're in a relationship that He keeps going, you need to get out of that relationship. That dating relationship is not good for you. He's leading you astray. She's leading you astray. And you keep going, oh, but he's so cute. She's so pretty. When He shows you the path to take, do you actually take it or not? That's how you know if you really fear the Lord. But what really stands in the way is this. It goes on in Proverbs chapter 3. Don't be impressed by your own wisdom. See, I think that's the main problem. That most of us, we are so impressed by the things that we think, like everything that pops up in our head, we go like, oh, I should tweet that. Like we're so impressed by our own wisdom that we start thinking, nah, God, I think I know better. Like, this is one of the funniest things that our society has come up with. And I don't know how long this has been around, but I see it really prevalent right now. Like somehow that humanity has evolved or progressed past the need for God. Like, oh, we're so far ahead of where they were long ago. We don't need dusty old books and dusty old men to tell us how to live our lives. We're so enlightened now. And it's like, I mean, let's be honest. We do the same stupid crap they did 2,000 years ago. We just do it with an iPhone in our hand now. Like, okay, so let's just say that this cultural myth of progress is actually true. That we have progressed on our own and we don't need God anymore. Let me ask you, how's that going? Anybody got any complaints with the world? We've solved all the problems. Everybody's flourishing in this fair and equitable society. Nobody has any complaints anywhere, no problems to be fixed because we've evolved so far. No. The other thing that we use social media for is to complain about our lives constantly. So clearly something's broken. Clearly going our own way has not worked. It has fallen short. It just doesn't work. Like nobody's going around saying, yeah, man, everything's awesome. Love life 100% of the time. We have fixed all the world's problems. No, not at all. We go around complaining constantly. There's been like a recurring theme in our sermons the last couple of weeks, and it must be because myself and maybe someone, I know it's for me. Now, whether it's not for you, I don't know. That's up to you. But I know that the Lord has been speaking to me the last 3 weeks with this question. Who's in charge? Who's in charge? Like if I fear the Lord, I actually have to do the stuff that He says. I actually have to trust Him. That when it comes to my money, when it comes to my actions, the way that I think, my relationships, the way I spend my time, the way I treat people, I actually have to trust that what He says is best. And that's how I know if I really fear the Lord. And it's not until I actually have that awestruck reverence that leads to trust that wisdom can ever really begin. Because the fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. Well, I'm not asking you this morning if you believe that there's a God. The book of James tells us even the demons know that there's a God. I'm asking you if you actually trust Him. Like if you actually follow what He says for your life. If not, today's the day. Today is the day for you to settle that up. For you to make that decision and say, God, I've been trying to play it both ways. Today's the day I commit wholly to you. God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to hear from your word. And I pray that today we would settle this question of who's in charge. That you would speak to our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. You need to pray this morning. Our altars are open here in the corners. You can turn your seat into an altar. You can send us a message if you're online. But let's meet with God this morning. Just one-on-one, talk to Him. Ask Him if you've really turned it all over. Make that decision today.